Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. 8 fragrances for a minimalist aesthetic. And that right there is exactly what I'm talking about. We're talking about elimination, eliminating all of the excess and getting to the core of what's really important. That's minimalist, and that is elegant. The modern wave of minimalism was brought to us by millennials as a reaction to excess technology. The first generation ever brought up, completely surrounded by it, and there's too much information, too much news, too many notifications, and too many distractions. So in order to cope, millennials adopted minimalism as a concept, as a way of looking at the world, and it is no surprise that the number one minimalist fashion house in the world was started by 2 millennials, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, with their fashion house, The Row. In an earlier video, I talked about how minimalism is associated with old money, and it is to a certain extent, but bear in mind that money can often be a distraction to minimalism, to that minimalist aesthetic, to that elegant aesthetic, because if you have too much money, you spend a lot of it on extraneous things, things that don't really matter, instead of getting to the core of what's important. How does this relate to fragrances? Well, you look at fragrances that are not considered to be elegant or classy. Things like Versace Eros, tons of vanilla, or something like red tobacco, tons of everything. Not saying they're bad fragrances, but what they aren't, they're not elegant fragrances because of the excess. What we're talking about today are fragrances that boil things down to their essence and their core and do very simple things, and that leads to a classy, elegant aesthetic. Fragrance number 1, this is Terre Eau Givree. And when it comes to minimalist, elegant designer houses, you don't need to look any further than Hermes. That is what they do. Jean-Claude Elena, the master perfumer for many years, he's a renowned minimalist. And then Christine Nagel has taken over. She's also a minimalist, so that's what you're getting, a very classy but high-quality minimalist fragrance house. Eau Givree translates to frosted water, and that's a real clue as to what this is trying to do. It is trying to have a cooling quality, and this is meant as a summer fragrance. You can probably wear it in the spring as well, but it's going to work really, really well in the summer. You get that with the note of citron, which smells kind of like a grapefruit, but it is fresher and it is certainly brighter than grapefruit. There is a note in here, a spice called Teamer, which it's a spice, but it's got kind of a grapefruit feel. So either way, you're going for that very fresh citrus component. So they've added juniper for a little bit more of a piney freshness, and then you have mineral notes. And a lot of minimalist fragrance houses, something like Prada, they will often add mineral notes to make it very, very clean and smooth things out. But ultimately, this is one of the best summer fragrances that I've tried in a long time. And that really leads to the discussion of performance. The closer you get to a true summer fragrance, the less performance you're going to get, because the molecules on very, very fresh notes tend to dissipate quickly. That happens here. However, it is Hermes, so you're going to get moderate performance. It's not bad at all, but just don't expect the same beast mode performance you get with Terre Hermes. Either way, this will be phenomenally refreshing in the summer. Fragrance number 2, this is Creed's Green Irish Tweed, and there are 2 reasons why this is such an iconic fragrance. The first one had to do with innovation. It's one of the very first fragrances to create an ozonic, very, very fresh, airy effect with the use of tons of violet leaf. And they wanted to create a citrus ozonic, so they kind of doubled down on the freshness. So instead of using lemon, which was, typical lemon, grapefruit, that kind of thing, they used lemon verbena, which is even lighter than lemon. So you've got the light lemon verbena and tons of violet leaf, creates an incredibly fresh effect, and that's one of the reasons why fabric softeners stole this DNA. Another reason why this is successful is its simplicity, its minimalist element. It's basically just 2 notes. Yes, there's iris, the powdery element, but really you could have done this fragrance with just straight up lemon verbena and violet leaf. That's the essence of the fragrance. The iris is a nice touch. It gives a powdery element to the fresh fragrance, but yeah, it's just really those 2 notes. It's a very simple fragrance. I think another thing that's often overlooked is just how hard it is to get a very fresh fragrance to last a long time. And this does it unbelievably well. I don't hear people talk about that much, but a standard summer citrus fragrance is probably about 4 or 5 hours. This is double that. Fragrance number 3, this is Tom Ford's Ombre Leather. And when it comes to elegant, classy, minimalist notes, leather is one of the last notes that comes to mind. When I think of leather, I think of very masculine, a little bit animalic. I think of potent, but I don't think of minimalist. And yet that's what Tom Ford has done here. And that's why this is such a popular fragrance, because they took a bunch of notes, a couple of other notes, and all they did was make it just into a pure leather masterpiece. There's a lot of people that try this and they just think, well, it just smells like leather to me. But they really have 2 other important notes here that just enhance the aspects of the leather. So it starts with a very sweet and clean leather. They add a little bit of sweetness to it by the amber, so it enhances the sweetness of the leather, the polish of the leather. And then you've got a jasmine note, which can often be done in an indolic way, which usually means a little bit fecal, a little bit animalic, and that adds to the animalic quality of the leather. So a lot of people will just smell this and go, it's just leather. So it feels like a one-note fragrance. And I mean, that's the essence of minimalism. Fragrance number 4, this is Prada L'Homme. And of all the fragrances on this list, this has the most amount of notes. And normally you get a lot of notes. You get a fragrance that's trying to do a bunch of things. Not this guy. This guy is just trying to keep it simple. It's trying to do 2 things. It's trying to create a powdery but soapy fragrance. And there's 7 key notes in here that basically do those 2 things. They all work together. So the main thing about this is the powderiness. You get a lot of iris. It's fundamentally an iris fragrance, but the powderiness of the iris is backed up by the powderiness of the sandalwood. And then you get that soapy element, and it starts with the florals. But they're all fresh florals in one way or another. So you get the freshness of the citrus in the neroli. So it's a citrusy freshness. And then you get violet, which is a very sharp and fresh note. And then you have geranium, which is another green, fresh floral. Then you throw in black pepper, which is spicy fresh. So those 4 notes keep it very fresh. And then you get that amber in the base for a shower gel soapy feel. It all works together wonderfully with really solid performance for a fresh fragrance. And Prada's another house that likes to keep it clean. And clean is a big element when it comes to being minimalist and elegant. Fragrance number 5, this is Goldfield and Banks Pacific Rock Moss. And this is a very simple citrus aromatic. So the citrusy element, the fresh element, comes from a lot of lemon. It's a very fresh lemon, and the freshness of it is backed up by a very fresh geranium note, which often has a green quality to it. And then the aromatic quality comes from the moss and the sage. And really, that's all it does. Now, this is a summer fragrance first and foremost. This is something that you really want to wear when it's super hot out, and it works. But again, the complaints are, it doesn't perform like a niche fragrance. It's expensive. But as I said before, when it comes to something that's really going to be refreshing in the summer, really refreshing, you got to sacrifice a little bit of performance. That is somewhat sacrificed here. Although for me, 4 to 5 hours for something this fresh, I'm fine with it. And I think this is a really nice fragrance. Fragrance number 6, this is SJP Stash from Sarah Jessica Parker. And Sarah Jessica Parker is a frag head. She's got a ton of fragrances in her house, but she doesn't have any for men except for this. This is considered unisex, but really it's a very woody, sharp woody fragrance that definitely leans masculine. And when it comes to minimalism, woody is good because it starts off by being clean. And clean is an important part of minimalism. But normally when you're doing a woody fragrance, it's normally paired with something. Normally a citrus woody is, at the very bare bones. But this is just more than anything. It's just a lot of woods. But it does have a trick up its sleeve. So you're going to get cedar, vetiver, and Massoya wood. And that's the trick, because Massoya wood is a milky wood. And you don't normally think of like milky or creamy when it comes to wood, but that's how it ends up feeling. So it is very woody, but with a creamy feel. So it's really different. And Masoya wood really makes it. Now, it does have a couple of accents. It uses black pepper and olibanum to give it a little bit of freshness to make it smell expensive. And it really does. The performance here is really, really good for a woody fragrance. I was really surprised by it. I put it on yesterday in the house. Didn't really notice it much. And then I went outside in the cold and immediately, it was like 2 or 3 hours after application, immediately I could smell it everywhere. So the performance here is very solid. The price is dirt cheap. I've never understood why this fragrance isn't more popular, although woody fragrances are not super in at the moment. That could help explain it. But I also love the bottle too. It's a very, very nice bottle. Great presentation. Fragrance number 7. This is Bottega Veneta pour Homme. And not surprisingly, Bottega Veneta is a quintessentially minimalist Italian designer house. And this is a very minimalist fragrance. It just smells like an evergreen forest. And they tried to cover all their bases here by putting a fir note, a pine note, and a juniper note, all 3 trees that you would find in an evergreen forest. And it is juniper tree. It's not juniper berry, which is a little bit more balsamic. No, they're going for the tree here. There's also some leather that's fairly prominent, but really, again, it's just kind of those 2 things. I pick up the evergreen forest element far more than anything. It's got a very natural feel to it. Performance is kind of average, but definitely minimalist, definitely a classy feel, and definitely a winter fragrance. I wouldn't wear this in the summer at all. Fragrance number 8, this is Calvin Klein's Euphoria, which might come as a surprise to a lot of people. However, if you look at the bottle, it's a very elegant, a very simple bottle that I really like. It's one of my favorite bottles. And so not just the bottle is minimalist, but so is the scent. It's essentially warm spicy and fresh spicy together. You get the fresh spicy element from black pepper and ginger, and then the amber adds a little bit of warmth to the whole thing, giving it just an overall spicy feel. It's a fantastic spring fragrance. There is a problem with the fragrance, though. It does not perform well. You can tell I've used a lot of this because A, I love the scent, but B, you have to overspray quite a bit in order to get reasonable performance. I would say on most people, you'll get about 3 hours, which is not very good for an EDT, but it is super cheap. And but I just love it for spring. So minimalism and elegance are definitely paired. It's all about eliminating extras, not having too much vanilla. Lord knows I'm tired of that. Not having too many notes, not trying to do too much. Just do your main thing that you're trying to do. A lot of these fragrances do it, and they come off as very classy, very elegant. Thanks for watching.